So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 19th IGEM YPPC final. My name is Gordon McMillan, and I'm part of SGN's innovation team and also chair of IGEM's Young Persons Network. And I'll be your host today. It's a wee bit of a different setup from what we envisioned for such a prestigious event. And whilst it is a great shame we're not able to meet face to face and see our amazing finalists up on stage, I'm delighted that the event is still going ahead online, and I'm sure it will be every bit as enjoyable. Firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Cadent, Northern Gas Networks, SGN, Town Gas and Wales and West Utilities. With their support, we'll be able to create even more development opportunities for our young professionals across the industry. So to help the session run smoothly, can we ask that you please make sure your camera is turned off and your microphone is muted. We will be recording this event and it will be on IGEM TV. So the agenda for today, as you can tell, our theme for this year is Reach for the Stars. With the global warming crisis and pressures to become smarter, cleaner and safer, it is crucial that we as individuals keep challenging ourselves, set ambitious goals and keep our vision of a better future at the forefront of all that we do. Today, I'm delighted to celebrate 10 young individuals all striving to do exactly that. Only one of our stellar contestants can be crowned the winner, and that lucky person will take away a once-in-a-lifetime trip to the World Gas Conference 2022 in Korea. They'll also get their name engraved on the prestigious IGEM YPPC trophy. Our finalists each have 15 minutes to present their projects and then 5 minutes to answer any questions from the judges. So if you do have any questions, please submit them via the chat facility where our finalists will have the opportunity to answer them there. So over the course of the day, the event is split up into 3 sessions. We're going to hear from 5 of our finalists from now till about 10:30. We'll then take a wee break where we can grab a cup of coffee and then come back for our next 5 at about 11:15. Once we hear from our final 5, we'll then take another break while the judges get together and make their final decision, where we'll crown our champion at about 1:45 later on this afternoon. So to do that, we've got an expert panel of judges and we're going to introduce them now. So we've got head of the judging panel, Duncan Wong, our IGEM president. Duncan is general manager of marketing and sales with the Hong Kong and China Gas Company, and it's a pleasure to have Duncan heading up the panel. We also have Graham Cleaton, vice president of UK operations for ULC Robotics. Being on the YPPC final panel is an annual highlight for Graham, and this is his 4th time in a row. So it's great to have Graham back in the judges panel. And also we have Jane Haswell, a consultant from Pipeline Integrity Engineers and connected in the gas industry. Jane was the deserved recipient of the Leadership Award in the 2019 awards, and it's great to have her first time experiencing a YPPC event. So now let's move on to our first finalist and kick off the session. I'd like to introduce you to Amy Tate, document controller for Cadent. Amy was our Midlands section heat winner, and she's going to talk to us about the HS2 pipeline diversion project. So over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Gordon. I'll just share my screen with you all so you can see my slides. There we go, so you should be able to see that now. Well, let me start by saying morning all. My name's Amy, and today I'm going to be telling you about what I've been involved with this past year as a document controller on the HS2 project. Firstly, just a little bit about myself. I've been with Cadent for 5 years now, and I've been in my current role for about 18 months. Prior to joining Capital Delivery's team, I didn't even know that document control was a thing. When I did join, I was told that the learning curve would be steep, and I'm not ashamed to say that there were times that I did question my ability to perform effectively in my role. But hopefully this presentation will demonstrate how adhering to agreed processes can influence personal growth and development, as well as having a positive impact across the programme. So the 6 key areas I'll be focusing on are: what is HS2, Cadent's role on the project, what is document control, the benefits of effective document control, and the importance of document control, and also what my role entails as a document controller. So firstly, let's start with what is HS2. High Speed 2 Limited is the company responsible for developing and promoting the UK's new high-speed rail network, which is funded by granting aid from the government. The city centres of London, Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds will be connected by 345 miles of new high-speed railway track. HS2 is expected to carry over 300,000 passengers a day, around 100 million a year when it is fully operational. HS2 is said to improve your journey, even if you don't use their trains or live along the route. By shifting long-distance services onto the brand new railway, HS2 will release space on existing routes, creating more space for additional local, cross-country, commuter and freight services across the country. This in turn will create more services and seats for rail users. It's also predicted to take hundreds of thousands of cars and lorries off our roads every year, reducing carbon emissions and improving air quality. So what role does Cadent play? Cadent's Capital Delivery team is responsible for completing 23 diversions of high-pressure gas distribution pipelines to enable the construction of the High Speed 2 railway. Our obligations include stakeholder management, design and construction, commercial management, programme management, and the management of safety, health, environment and quality. We liaise with multiple contractors to ensure our objective is achieved safely and to the highest of standards, whilst ensuring our regulators, Ofgem and the HSE are happy. Our work is aligned to the schedule of the HS2 construction and split into Phase 1, Phase 2A and Phase 2B. As of last month, we have now commissioned the last of the Phase 1 diversions. This year alone, despite restrictions due to the pandemic, we have successfully completed 12 local transmission systems diversions, giving a total of 14 complete to date. The team have reached this incredible milestone by following the guidance and controls that have been put in place to allow us all to stay safe and healthy whilst at work, which has kept the challenging programme of works on track during these uncertain times. So before we move on to what is document control, would any of our judges care to take a guess as to what we mean by document control? If I throw that out to Jane.
Hi, Amy. My experience of document control is you need an excellent document controller to help you keep track, because once you start on a project, documents just multiply phenomenally and you must be able to trace them. That's my take on it.
Very, very well explained. So we'll go on to see the actual definition of document control. So the purpose of document control is to enforce controlled processes and practices for the creation, review, modification, distribution and accessibility of documentation. As a document controller, we are responsible for the timely, accurate and efficient preparation and management of documents. We control the numbering, sorting, filing, storing and retrieval of documentation provided by the project teams, and we play a proactive role in the review cycle of documentation by ensuring that the right people review the right documents at the right time. Document control is critical to ensure traceability, and it also helps protect business interests. In the event of an incident, it is critical to ensure that we can retrieve the last updated document applicable to that incident. Without proper document control, you may have a lot of difficulties locating the relevant documentation required. This is also the case for audits, both internal and external. So what does that mean for me in my role? Document control is an in-depth process-based role, and luckily I'm a bit of a stickler for process. You need to be attentive to detail, able to retain a variety of information, be time efficient, and able to meet rigorous deadlines at short notice. Collaboration with the project team is essential to ensure the agreed processes are followed and consistency is maintained. I'm continuously expanding my knowledge by having overviews with colleagues who specialise in other areas, such as risk management and programme coordination, and this learning keeps me motivated on a daily basis. As a process enforcer, I am also responsible for the training of new personnel joining our team on our document management system, Aconex. During their training, I ensure to explain the document control process fully to manage the team's expectations and instill best practices. I've learned that enforcing the process in a supportive but disciplined manner, in addition to encouraging collaboration and effective communication from the start, leads to a more confident workforce, increasing efficiency across the programme. So in my role, I am responsible for the formal transmission of documentation between HS2, Cadent and Mainworks contractors. These include, but are not limited to, early warning notices, design data, consents and licenses, a variety of plans, reports and programme correspondence. All outgoing Cadent documentation must be assigned a unique reference number for audibility and accompanied by a transmittal note, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Each transmittal note is also assigned its own unique transmittal reference for audit and traceability purposes. Primarily, I take care of HS2 facing document control and assist with the Mainworks contractor side when the workload is high or when my colleague is out of the office. But I also complete a number of administrative tasks across the programme. One of the main responsibilities of my role is to ensure version control is in place for all documentation, and this does play a critical role in those admin tasks I assist with. One of these tasks includes liaising with the project delivery engineers and site assurance officers to ensure the construction readiness checklists, or more commonly known as a CRC, are up to date and include all the relevant evidence. A CRC is a document which dictates what consents, permits and licenses must be obtained to ensure our works are compliant to the HS2 bill. This document is required for all stages of works on every diversion we complete. To aid the project team, I analyse the CRCs to determine what remains outstanding and what actions are required to close the document out. To monitor the progress of the CRCs and provide a simple visual overview to senior management, I developed the document you can see here. Based on a colour coding system, when a CRC is updated or closed out, the analysis table is updated. Each diversion you can see down the left has its own page within this workbook, where the specific details can be found, including any updates or outstanding actions. The process I implemented has helped to enforce the importance of completing the CRCs and has driven the project team to ensure they maintain these documents. It has also encouraged them to utilise document control to aid the overall progression. I'm extremely proud of how well this document has positively served the team and the feedback that it has received. I'm also involved with the creation and modification of document control procedures. These documents detail the processes that we must adhere to and enforce, or as we like to say, how we do things around here. These processes are constantly monitored and updated to ensure our works remain in governance to the programme. So this leads nicely on to the benefits of document control. Document control plays a vital role in the progression of the programme, as it ensures the flow of documentation and reduces human error without bias, professionally and efficiently. The benefits of this include convenient retrieval of documentation, eliminate delay and disruption when attempting to locate a specific revision of a document, well-planned and efficient distribution of documentation. It ensures regulatory compliance, secure documents, and can also show a reduction in costs by ensuring the standardised practices of document control are enforced. So lastly, I would like to share a story. Whilst not related to the utilities industry, I do believe that it perfectly explains how important document control can be, especially during a crisis. So document control played a crucial role in the avoidance of a catastrophic event during the Apollo 13 mission in 1970. Roughly 2 days into the mission, the astronauts on board heard a loud bang. It was established that an oxygen tank had exploded, causing damage to various systems and threatening the lives of the crew. The damage consisted of a loss in power, heat, and drinking water reserves. At over 330,000 kilometres above Earth, the crew were in a critical situation, and the mission objective was now ensuring the crew returned home safely. The astronauts on board worked very closely with the team on the ground to explore ways to make the necessary repairs needed to get them home. The engineers working on the ground went through the spacecraft's construction documentation and developed makeshift repairs solutions based on only the materials that were available to the crew. Thanks to the up-to-date comprehensive documentation being readily available to those on the ground and maintaining effective communication with all parties, all 3 astronauts touched down on terra firma almost 6 days after they initially took off. Documentation and, indirectly, document control were essential in understanding the nature of and the extent of the damage sustained by the spacecraft, and in developing the ingenious repair solutions and in saving the lives of the crew. On a closing note, implementing document control and investing in a skilled professional document controller is a proactive way to protect the business, as well as ensuring accessibility, retrievability, control and security of your documents and information. I would definitely recommend the use of document control on any project, big or small, and I hope that you would agree with what you have seen here today. Thank you very much for listening.
Superb presentation, Amy, there to kick us off. Well done. Just before you relax, we'll have a few questions from the judges.
Yeah.
We'll go over to Duncan first of all.
Yeah. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Amy. It was a very good presentation.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. Number one, I would like to know, is this document control system is developed by Cadence or just an off-the-shelf system?
So the primary one that we use on HS2, which is called Aconex, is actually developed by a company called Oracle. So we liaised with Oracle. We told them what we needed the system to do, how we needed it to work. We shared our contracts with them, so the workings of the contracts could be embedded in the system in the background. And we implemented it on HS2 almost just over a year ago now. It was the 10th of September last year. And since then, it has worked really well in maintaining all the documents, and it's also helped us document controllers as well. The systems that we used to use prior to implementing Aconex, it was just SharePoint, and unfortunately, SharePoint, it just wasn't great at holding all of our documents, and we weren't able to find them quickly and easily like we can on Aconex. And Aconex has been such a success on HS2 that we have now implemented it on 4 other projects for capital delivery so far, 2 which went live yesterday.
Thank you. And then just a couple more quick questions. As an implementator, what were the hurdles to implement this system and how to resolve them? And the last one is that you have shown us the benefits, but are there any quantifiable benefits you can achieve from implementing this system?
So the main hurdle that we faced when we implemented Aconex on HS2 was just getting the project team used to actually using a new system. That was the biggest hurdle, really, and then just in encouraging the training and the actual use. I think because it was implemented halfway through the works, A lot of people were used to a set way of working, and changing it halfway through, not a lot of people were too happy with it to begin with. But as soon as they saw the benefits of, the time reduction in reviewing documents and processing the documents, and how easy it was for them to actually perform in their role using the new system, it did turn them over quite quickly. Now everyone commends APNX, and they can't speak highly enough of it. And I'd say that the way that we resolved it was just enforcing the process in a supportive way, but also saying this is how we do things around here now. We all need to be consistent, and we all need to agree to the adhere processes. It is just about standing your ground, really, and sticking by the processes that have been put in place.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. So the next question.
Okay, thanks, Duncan. We'll go to Graham if you've got any questions.
Yes, first of all, a comment, Amy. A super presentation and a super project. You must be really enjoying it, Amy.
Yeah.
My question's around accountability. My experience in the industry has been that document control is only as good as keeping people accountable. Could you just share with us your view on how you keep people accountable to your processes?
Well, main way is if I notice that someone's doing something wrong, I let them know about it. I'll explain the process as to how they're not remaining in governance to the process, and I'll explain how they can steer themselves back into being compliant with the process. Obviously, if we do have, luckily we haven't really had this happen, but if it was to happen where someone was continuously ignoring the process and not following it and putting the rest of the programme of works at risk, then we do have escalation processes in place. So I would escalate it to my line manager. I'd explain the situation and the steps that I have taken up to that point to try and get the person to take accountability of where they're going wrong. And that at that point, it would really come out of my remit, and it would go into management's call, and they would deal with it. But I think especially with the system AConnect that we use, everyone is accountable for their own work. So we can see as document controllers what's outstanding, what's overdue, what needs to be done, and we can chase people on that. So on a weekly basis, we will run a report to see what review documents, what we call workflows, are outstanding or overdue, and we will forward that information onto the individuals and say these are overdue, you need to make sure that these are completed ASAP, and therefore that puts the accountability onto them because we have picked up where they are falling short and we have told them what they need to do to bring themselves back up into main consistency.
Thank you, Amy, very thorough. Thank you. I'll hand over to Jane.
Hi, thank you, Graham. Amy, that was an excellent presentation. It's quite a difficult subject to make sound exciting, and I think you made it an excellent job of that. The question I'd like to ask is, you made reference to the gap analysis process that you developed. Yeah. Can you just explain why you developed that, and also how you gained support from the user community to actually implement it?
Yeah, so it was shortly after I joined the team, actually. I was part of a meeting where we were looking at all of the CRCs across the programme, and it became apparent that some of them had fallen short, and there was a lot of inconsistency across the documents. So that's where I was asked to take all of the CRCs and analyse them to see what was still outstanding, and how I could help to close them out. So after about spending 2 weeks analysing all of the documents, I put all my findings into a spreadsheet and sent them out to the project delivery engineers, and said, right, these are what remains outstanding. This is how I can help close them out. And basically my role in the helping them close them out is locating the documents that are required as evidence and locating the relevant references that relate to those documents. So on the CRC, it'll ask for what we call an EB reference. Now, EB is a HS2 document management system. So their unique references are what we use as evidence to say that we have submitted that documentation to HS2 and that they have approved it, or that we need to amend it for it to be approved. So my role specifically really was sitting down with the project delivery engineers or the site assurance officers, going through what documents we needed to get the evidence reference number for, and then going on to the HS2 system, locating all of those relevant references and updating the CRC with those references. I'd then follow it up with the project delivery engineer on a weekly basis to see if there was anything else that could be closed out. And just by saying to the project team that I was working closely with on this, like, this is what document control is here for. I'm able to locate and access the relevant documents quickly and efficiently to get you the evidence that you need to close out your documents. This in turn will save them time, because they're not having to fiddle around on a system that they're not quite familiar with. They can just tell me what they need and I can go on and get all the evidence for them. So since then, they have kind of realised the importance of document control and have utilised me a lot more, because they know that I can find documents a lot quicker than them, plus it saves them time and they can be getting on with other stuff that's more relevant to their role rather than trying to hunt down documents.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Amy.
That's brilliant. Amy, thank you very much for your presentation and kicking us off. Excellent answering on the questions as well. So well done. You can relax now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. So now we'll move over to our Irish section winner, Niamh Gillen, who's an innovation engineer from the Gas Networks Ireland. Niamh's going to talk about carbon capture and storage, decarbonising the gas network. So over to you, Niamh.
Thanks, Gordon. Simon, I might just share my screen as well, if that's okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep, looks good, Niamh.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Niamh Gillen and I'm an innovation engineer at Gas Networks Ireland, but I do have a background in geology. And I'm delighted this morning to have the opportunity to talk to you about how Gas Networks Ireland is planning to decarbonise its gas network. And I'm going to focus in on a technology called carbon capture and storage. And for the remainder of the presentation, I'll probably refer to this as CCS. So why does Gas Networks Ireland need to decarbonise? So Ireland, like most countries around the world, we're beginning to feel the impacts of climate change. And in the last 2 years, we can think back to the beast from the east or Storm Emma. There's been numerous red weather warning events, but then there's also been lovely long periods of dry and sunny weather. And although they were extremely enjoyable at the time, the reality was they put our water infrastructure and our agricultural sector under extreme pressure due to drought. Gas currently accounts for 1/3 of Ireland's electricity fuel mix. And in the last 5 days alone, there's been highs of up to 61% and lows of 31%. So even though efforts have been made in Ireland to reduce our use of fossil fuels, the reality is that when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, gas is still playing a critical role. So how is GNI going to go about this decarbonisation vision? So our vision is centred around 4 technologies. The first one is CNG up in the top hand corner. Then we have biomethane, hydrogen, and CCS. So what is CCS? CCS is an integrated suite of technologies that stops large quantities of CO2 being emitted to the atmosphere. And all aspects and components of the CCS process chain have existed by themselves for decades at commercial scale. Now, the most common application for CCS is in power gen and industry. So we'll just use power gen as an example and walk through the process. So the CO2 is captured by one of 3 capture methods, and in this instance, it's post-combustion capture. So instead of the exhaust gas being sent to the atmosphere, it is instead diverted into this capture unit. Here in the capture unit, the CO2 goes through a chemical process of absorption and is removed from the exhaust gas. It is then stripped away from the solvent and goes for compression and conditioning. And the compression and conditioning is to get ready for transport via ship, pipeline, road or rail for underground storage in a geological formation. Another application of CCS would be in hydrogen production. So when hydrogen is produced by steam methane reforming, the CO2 that's created again can be compressed, transported to a geological formation. And one other application of CCS would be BECCS, bioenergy and CCS. And UCC Mari, which is an Irish research institution, have said that Ireland will not achieve its net zero targets by 2050 without negative emissions targets or negative emissions technologies. So CCS is technically doable. There's 19 large-scale facilities operating globally. There's over 6,500 kilometres of CO2 pipeline operating to an ISO standard. 260 million tonnes of CO2 have been stored since 1972, and that's only a fraction of what can be achieved with over 10,000 gigatons of CO2 storage space globally identified. And of that 260 million tonnes of CO2 that has been stored present day, a proportion of that comes from a process known as enhanced oil recovery, or EOR. And this is an industry technique in the oil and gas industry, where essentially in oil extraction, sometimes the recovery rates aren't favourable, and in turn, to achieve greater rates, we inject CO2 into a reservoir to change the composition of the oil and in turn make it more mobile. So although that isn't why we are doing enhanced oil or CCS, we're doing it to put CO2 permanently away and not to recover any more oil. But it's really, I suppose, good to know that it's a very well understood practice of injecting CO2 into the ground, and it's been an industry practice that's been around for decades. So Gas Network Ireland, with its parent company Arvia, have been assessing different business models for CCS in Ireland. One business model would be the export model, and that would look at large emitters that are located near Irish ports for onwards transport via ship to European storage sites such as in Norway. And this business model is actually underpinned by a memorandum of understanding that Arvia has signed with Equinor, a Norwegian oil and gas company, to assess the feasibility of shipping CO2 over to Norway. But for the remainder of the presentation, I'm going to focus in on where the journey all began for CCS in Ireland, and that's the Cork feasibility study, and I'll furthermore focus in on my technical work on the project. So firstly, I'd just like to point out to our friends who aren't from Ireland just where we're located in Cork. So we're at the very, very south here of the island, just on the coast. So the Cork CCS project, the business model for that assumes capturing CO2 from 2 power stations and 1 oil refinery. It then could potentially be transported via pipeline to an offshore depleted gas field that lies just 50 kilometres off the coast of Cork. The potential project could potentially capture up to 2 million tonnes per annum. That is the equivalent of removing 1.1 million cars from Irish roads, the emissions from 750,000 oil-heated homes, and emissions from nearly 1 million cows. So it definitely has significance. So let's look in a little bit closer at the area, and we can just see how uniquely positioned all the aspects of this potential CCS project are. So we have a power station in Ahada, a power station in Whitegate, and also an oil refinery. And located not far away is Inch Terminal, and this is where the pipeline from the gas field makes landfall on the island of Ireland, and ultimately then where the gas is distributed throughout our network. Also, from Ahad to Inch, there is also another smaller pipeline existing. So if a CCS project was to be realised, only a small spur would be needed in order to connect Whitegate to the existing infrastructure. So now I want to focus a little bit in on the geology and Kinsale Head itself. So the Kinsale Head began, or Kinsale Energy began operations on Kinsale Head in 1978. And supplied Ireland's gas for an extremely long time. The A sand, which you can see here, is the dark red reservoir, is the main producer. It produced 80% of the gas from this area. And it's also the reservoir with the best qualities and conditions. Thus, this is our target site for CO2 storage. Now, I'm going to go through a quick geology lesson with you all, and I hope you're all paying attention as I might ask some questions. So in oil and gas production, you need 5 things, and these are known as the 5 steps to heaven. So you need a source rock, which is where your oil and gas is generated. Then you have your reservoir rock, and between your source and reservoir, you have migration, and that's the ability of the oil and gas to move into the reservoir. Then we have the trap, which is the overall structure and shape of the play or the reservoir. And finally, we have this rock here known as a seal rock or a cap rock, which overlays the entire play and stops further migration of oil or gas out of the reservoir. But for CO2 storage, we only need 3 steps to heaven. That's the reservoir, the trap, and the cap rock. So we're going to focus in on those now. So the reservoir is where the CO2 will sit within this field. And it has 2 really important parameters or conditions. It has to have porosity, which is the space of which the CO2 sits within the rock. So it's void space within the rock for the CO2. And secondly, it has to have permeability. And the permeability is, I suppose, the ability of the pores to be connected. So it will allow movement of the CO2 when injected. So if we inject CO2, we don't want it to all just sit beside the wellbore. We want it to be able to move and disperse throughout the reservoir. And if we were in the same room right now, I would be passing this around. I hope everybody can see it. This is a piece of core from the North Sea, from the Bray field, and this is a piece of reservoir core. And as you can see, it's a solid rock. It's all there. It's not a cavern or a hole in the ground, which is a very common misconception for oil and gas, as people think that it's a hole in the ground and this is where it comes from, but that is not the case. And like at Kinsale Head, this reservoir rock is a sandstone, and it also has good porosity. So if you consider this rock to be 100% volume, if you consider then 20% of this volume is void space, that is where the CO2 would sit. And the way I like to explain it is, if you've ever brought your child or even been to a soft play area and there is a ball pit, and you'll have the ball pit and you'll fill it up as many of the balls that you can get in as possible, but there'll always be space between them because of the different sizes and shapes. And that's exactly how the microscopic pore space is created as well within reservoir rocks. And similarly, like Kinsale, this rock would have had fantastic permeability, allowing the CO2 to move throughout the reservoir. Now, the next part is the trap, and that's the physical shape. And I'm just drawing your attention to the screen, and you can see like a dome shape on your screen. This is known as an anticline, and this is the shape out in Kinsale Head as well of the structure. So this is really important for us to understand, and I'm going to again use another quick analogy. So if you consider yourself standing beside a tent, and the tent is shaped like a dome, and that tent is suspended, say, 1 meter off the ground, but you're going to fill the tent up with balloons, and you're filling it up with balloons, so it's going to start at the top, filling up, moving down, and eventually once it's filled, the balloons will start moving out the side. So it's really important for us to understand the structure and the shape of the reservoir in order to know when to say stop injecting and to be able to control all of those sort of things as well. And finally, the cap rock. So the cap rock is the impermeable rock that overlays the system and in turn stops any further migration of CO2 out of the reservoir. And in Kinsale Head, the cap rock is known as the Galt clay. So now we know that there is the 3 steps to heaven for CO2 storage, and we also know Kinsale Head has stored gas for millions and millions of years, so surely it should be okay for a CO2 storage site. But it isn't as simple as that, as the reservoir and the area has went under significant change from its virgin state back in 1970. And that's mainly due to the pressure drop across the reservoir and also due to wells puncturing that cap rock, which is essential for containing the CO2. So this prompted me to get involved in some technical work and mainly around the position of no showstoppers for Kinsale Head as a storage site. So the first piece of work that I commissioned was with CGG, and what they done was they done a study on reprocessed seismic, and one of the main things they wanted to identify was there a secondary cap rock that existed in the Kinsale area, and this is for an alignment with the EU storage directive. So if I can draw your attention down here, We already know that the cap rock, the Gulf clay, overlays the conceal head. But now we need to know if there is another cap rock above that again, just in case, for whatever reason, there might be some leakage out of the reservoir in a very rare event. So we were delighted that this study showed that there was a secondary cap rock existing, fulfilling the EU directive requirement, but it also did suggest that more studies be done if further work was needed for an Indigenous storage site assessment. But overall, there were no showstoppers from a geoscience point of view. The second thing that needed looked at was legacy wells, and this is, I suppose, the most common risk associated with depleted oil and gas fields as CO2 storage sites. There's 4 well types in the conceal area, but the ones of concern to us would be the previously abandoned and suspended exploration wells. So the previously abandoned wells, does what it says in the tin, they've been previously abandoned and they've been filled with a cement plug, and any infrastructure associated with them on the seabed have been removed. Therefore, if, for example, they weren't plugged and abandoned to a suitable standard for CO2 storage, they would become a risk, and a difficult risk to mitigate against, as it would be quite difficult to find them. And then also the suspended wells. Now they're a bit easier to find as they still have a wellhead sitting on the seabed, but again, to remediate, if they were not suitable, would involve going back into the well, milling out the plug and placing a new plug in. So again, we needed to find out now if this was going to be a showstopper for our Indigenous storage site assessment. So this prompted me to get involved with a consultant, and this consultant was an exploration appraisal well specialist advisor, and I got him to undertake an assessment of well completions and their suitability for containing CO2. And although there are risks, like most things, with the wells, there are no, I suppose, showstoppers to preclude us looking further at the conceal area as a CO2 storage site, although mitigation measures will probably be required, and especially once we know the dispersion of the plume and what wells will be coming in contact with the CO2. So the long-term liability of CO2, and are there risks? So like with most things, there are risks, but it's how we manage those risks and mitigate against them are the important things. And I'd just like to draw your attention to a quote from Bayes that says, "No reported leakage of any significance has occurred in any of the 250 million tonnes of CO2 that has been stored underground in the last 47 years. So I think it's safe to say we can proceed with confidence, but also with caution in our risk management. So to conclude, and I hope this is what you got from the presentation today, that Ireland needs to decarbonise along with Gas Networks Ireland, but gas is still going to play a critical role in our energy mix right into the future. Some industries will definitely need CCS in order to decarbonise. Carbon capture and storage is a proven technology. There are no showstoppers to preclude us from further assessing Conceal Head as an Indigenous storage site, but in the meantime, an exporting option probably will be more favourable until the CCS industry as such is well established within Europe. Thank you very much for listening and attending today, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Superb, Niamh there. Well done. Congratulations on an excellent presentation, Niamh. Really good style of explaining technical complex issues in a really nice, simple way. So we'll come to Jane first. Jane, have you got any questions for Niamh?
Apologies, Gordon. I'm a bit slow there. Thank you very much. Niamh, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you. I've got a personal interest in it because I'm doing quite a bit of project work on this area at the moment. I was particularly interested in the comment you made about assessing legacy wells. And obviously you're doing a risk assessment and looking at mitigations. Can you just explain what you think is perhaps the biggest risk you need to consider, and have you got to this stage of thinking about mitigation?
Yeah, so I suppose the biggest risk we need to consider is understanding the plume and its dispersion. So the wells exist, and we know already present day that those wells, those legacy wells, were plugged and abandoned to the UK oil and gas standard. And even back then, that standard is still suitable for CO2 storage present day. Now, with wells going forward, plugged and abandoning, it probably would be better to use a CO2 resistant cement, as the reactions that can take place between the CO2 and the cement can happen over a long time. And then also that would create microannulus as well, which could potentially lead to small fractures within the cement casing. And that is also a risk. But again, it comes down to where that CO2 plume is going to disperse. So for example, if there was a well that we thought was a potential leakage pathway, and again, thank God, our risk assessment has shown that none of them are majorly in any way a risk. But if one were to be, if, for example, the CO2 plume was going to disperse towards that well, you could, for example, put in a water injection well, which would control the plume and send it back and in another direction to keep you away from that well. So that would be an example of one mitigation measure, along with CO2 resistant cement in the future, if, for example, one of the cement wasn't, I suppose, suitable for CO2 storage.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Niamh. It was very clear. Can I hand over to Graham now?
We'll just take one more question from Graham. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Niamh. Super presentation, very passionate. What's the biggest challenge you've personally overcome on the project?
I think for myself, the biggest challenge is the risk. I think I personally work for a semi-state company, and we have to be very careful about how we manage risk and identifying risk. And with all that in mind, that is what prompted all of the work that was undertaken. And with the work that I undertook, one of the bigger challenges I had was the scope that I had to develop for these consultants. I suppose if my scope wasn't accurate, we weren't going to get the right answers. And fully understanding the needs of CO2 storage and where the risks lied helped me to develop the best scope possible in order to fulfill the little mini projects that we needed in order to do assessments. And I would say one other thing that I found as not a personal challenge, but a challenge in itself, was relaying this back to senior management in non-technical language. It's a skill that I hopefully have developed through lots of analogies that you would have seen today, but making sure that people understand in clear and concise language on a very complex project is something that was a challenge, but hopefully one that I've overcome.
Okay, thank you.
Superb, Niamh. Well done for an excellent presentation. If anyone has any questions for Niamh or Amy, just put them in the chat function and we'll be able to answer them as we continue with the competition. So we're going to move on to the first of our Far East section, over 5,000 miles away from Ireland. We're going to go to Theo Wong, engineer from the Hong Kong and China Gas Company. Theo's going to talk to us about an innovative approach for gas service riser operations. So over to you, Theo.
Hi everyone, can you see my, sorry. Hi everyone, can you see my slide here? Oops.
Yes, Theo, that's fine.
That's fine? All right, just a moment. All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Theo. Today I'm going to present an innovative approach for gas service riser inspections and analytics. So before starting our journeys, here is some background information. In Hong Kong, we have about 18,000 of buildings with town gas supplied, and there are actually about 70,000 of vertical riser erected to these buildings. And from the figure here, you can see that the gas supply system in Hong Kong is that we make use of the vertical riser to supply gas, and after that, there would be gas lateral riser to distribute the gas to individual residential user. So from here, actually you can see the vertical riser is undoubtedly important for the whole gas supply system. And because this component is critical, the gas company in Hong Kong is very sincere. They provide a regular safety inspection services to the residential customer. And what they do is to visit to the individual user, the flat of the individual users, and to check the gas service piping on a 18-month basis. And traditionally, what they do for these inspections are highly rely on the visual inspections. And there are two occasions for them to have that chance to do that inspection. For the first one is they can make use of the bamboo scaffolding if there is any building major renovations there. So the technical guy just climb up to those scaffold and do the inspection visually. And the second way for them to carry out the inspection is just to directly go to the user flat and to visit the pipe conditions through the windows. And from here, after they do the inspections, what's next was about the analytic process. And traditionally, how they do the analytic process is that, so as I mentioned before, they do the on-site inspections. And after the on-site inspections, they capture the riser image for the gas service riser. And with these bunches of images, they back to the office, report preparations. And once the report is ready, then send to the engineers for approval and distribute to the customer. But as I have to address one point is, for the one who do the report preparations are actually our technical staff, the licensed gas installer. So they are skilled in gas maintenance and gas installations, but now they are assigned to do the reporting. So it is a kind of tedious work to them. And from the inspections and analytic approach that I mentioned earlier, actually there are quite a few challenges that we are facing. For the first one is in the inspection aspect. As I mentioned, because there are two ways for them to do the inspections. One way is to visit the individual flat, but just imagine if you are not at the home and out for, go for work on that day, or you just don't want someone to get in your house for doing the inspections. Actually, the access rate to this residential customer, to the flat to the residential customer, would cause the concerns of how comprehensive or how the coverage of the inspection that we have carried it causes a concern. And if we consider about the scaffolding to do the gas service riser inspection, because in Hong Kong, under the statutory requirement, the major building renovations happens 30 years per once. So from here, you can actually think, okay, so if we do inspections like in every 30-year cycle, we actually difficult to have the early detections of any problem to this gas service riser. And for the analytic process, as I mentioned, because our technical guys are very skilled in the gas maintenance and installations, but now they are assigned to do the report preparations. And as I mentioned in the background information, there are about 70,000 of gas riser erected in Hong Kong. So just imagine it is quite a tedious administrative work, and the use of labor resources can actually have a better arrangement. And with these challenges, what I did is I make use of some advanced equipment and the artificial intelligence system in order to create an innovative approach for the inspections and analytic process. And firstly, for the inspection approach, in here, what I did is I created an advanced equipment, which is a tripod with a long-range camera and laser moving gun. And with this setup, our technical guys can carry out the gas service riser inspection at a remote distance from the buildings, just like the figure shown here. And we have something called a programmable slider. And for this slider is to control the up and down movement of the camera and the laser moving gun. So our technical guys can just from the bottom to top to visually inspect the gas service riser every time. And here is a video for demonstrations. So in here, you can see it is simplified equipment setup. We have the long range, we have the laser moving gun here. Then we have the tripod, and we have to set the leveling before we do the inspections. Otherwise, the image we capture would be a diagonal one instead of a vertical one. And after we have the equipment setting, we need to do some configurations to the programmable slider. For example, we have to know about the horizontal distance, and we need to configure the speed that we have to carry out for carrying out the inspections. And after all this, what you need to do is just to click the start button. And once you click the start button, the inspections would automatically conducted like the circle here demonstrating. And this is the innovative approach for gas riser inspections with the deployment of the advanced equipment. So in the second part is, okay, how about the analytic process? Thanks for the technologies. What I have deployed here is an artificial intelligence system, which is mostly used for the video analytic process, which means we firstly upload a video to a web-based platform, and the web-based platform is actually equipped with an AI system. And the AI system would help us to generate a condition report for for the report distributions. And this is the high-level diagram. And what exactly happening in the AI system is that the system would help us to carry out four things. The first thing is because what we did is to capture a video, and the system would help us to like extract frames from this video and to generate a very long image like a panorama for the gas surface riser. And after that, we do the parameter setting. We indicate which part is the vertical riser and which part is the lateral riser. And after this configuration, the AI system would automatically go for the object detections and corrosion classifications process, like the pictures demonstrated in here. And to make it more clear, here is a demonstrations video on how the system actually works. So we have the web-based platform, and we select the video that we need to upload for the system for the analytic process. And once you click the video, it would go to something called the pre-processing, which means you have to, here's the video, you have to do some basic setting, like the shooting directions, or like at the beginning time for appearing the object. And after you configure the basic setting, the video go for the pre-processing process, which is about the stitching. And after stitching, it go to step 2, is to indicate which part is the vertical riser and which part is the lateral riser. And at the same time, we have to do some labeling just to make it clear on, like, we are inspecting the flat 17, or we are visiting the flat 18, the gas lateral riser, and so-called of these configurations. And after this, the system would automatically just go to the detections, corrosion classifications, and it gives you a condition report on this layout. And once our engineer receives this report and to check if the things is correct and accurate, they can just generate an Microsoft Word format and for the report distributions. And with this artificial intelligence system, one question you may ask, okay, you are now making use of computer, doing some manual things. So what is the accuracy for this system? So in here, you can see, as of the November 2019, which is like the soft launch, since the soft launch of that system, the accuracy rate for that system is already reaches more than 85%, which is similar to, which is close to or even above the industrial acceptance standard. And for this project, we have already processed about more than 200 videos, and more than 28,000 of residential customers are benefited. And for the benefit for the project, it's obviously about the operations efficiency enhancement, But one point I have to address is even we are under the pandemic of COVID-19, with this equipment set up in the system, actually our technical guy can still carry out the gas surface riser inspection because we do not need to contact the customer once when we need to do the inspections. So actually the whole project is quite beneficial for us to ensure the integrity and the safety of the gas supply system. And finally, what I would like to address is what next for this project. So with the whole project, actually there are some enhancements that we can go further, like pushing up the accuracy rate of the system. And the second stage is, because right now we have so-called like a dual mode for the inspection and analytics, on one hand we make use of the labor, and on one hand we make use of the video analytics. But in the later stage, the video analytics will replace the manual inspection. And for the final two stages, just to promote locally in the mainland China, globally. And that's all for my presentations. Thank you.
Superb, Theo. Brilliant presentation there on an innovative approach and not having to climb up and visually inspect these risers. So we'll go to Duncan Wong for the first question from the judges, please.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you. Theo,
yep.
I just have one question. What is the success rate of this inspection method? And for those pipes, if they cannot be detected, so what measures you will take to compensate the result?
All right. You mean the successful rate is in terms of the accuracies or?
Yes, the accuracy, yes.
Oh, as I mentioned, the accuracy, because right now we make use of the AI system to carry out the inspection in order to classify whether the pipe is corroded or whether the kind of object that we are detecting. And the accuracy I mentioned in the PowerPoint slideshows is the accuracy of the system of correctly doing giving the right answer to us of whether it is corroded or not corroded, or is it seriously corroded, or just like a minor defect. And this is about the accuracy rate or the successful rate of my presentations. And for the second issues is just the measure in compensating of the video analytics and advanced equipment. Because right now the equipment we do it quite remotely from the building, and someone may question, okay, you're just looking to the front wheel of the vertical riser. How about at the back? And it can actually be observed. So the compensation method is, as I mentioned, right now we are doing something like the dual mode in the inspections. Just in case if we do the video analytics, if there's nothing happen, then very good, because we have the gas detector, we have the image, if just normal conditions, no further actions. But once if there is corrosions or we detect gas leakage, in that case, what we do is we're going back to the manual process. We do the manual inspections in order to ensure the whole system is safe to our customer.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
Superb. We'll go over to Graham now.
Okay, thank you, Theo. Really interesting presentation. Very good, thank you. My question is very much around the customer side, the general public. What are you doing as part of the project to ensure that you safeguard people's privacy with your process?
For this one, in regard to the privacy, because every time when we go to the assay, like to the assay for carrying out the inspection, we do not just get into the place and then do the inspections. What we have to do, the very first step, we have to visit the property management company at that assay in order to obtain their consents. And because the property management company there is on behalf of the incorporated owners committee for that assay, so we will liaise with them first. And second, once we obtain their acceptance and approval, we would distribute, like having some notice to them and like sending them letter to tell them we are going to carry out such inspections in a certain period of time. And this would be the setup that we are using. And just if they have any question, they can contact our staff directly. And these are the measures we will safeguard.
Perfect. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
Superb, Theo. And we've just got enough time for one question from Jane.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Theo, that was excellent. At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the inspection of risers was carried out on a 30-year cycle, and you covered the significant volume of risers that you need to consider. Can you see how the system you've described could actually identify, give you early detection of a problem, and how that could then help you to go and investigate that at a wider scale?
Okay, maybe for this question, I try to give some example to answer that. So right now we with also the advanced equipment, we have 3 ways for doing the inspections. The very first way is the make use of the make use of the scaffold for the major building renovations, which is 30 years per once, and this is a very long time, which is not good. And the second way is make use of the regular safety inspection that we have is on an 18 months basis to cover the estate, and this frequency is still okay. With right now with the equipment, with the system we here, actually for like every week you can just visit 1 to 2 estate and do the inspections, and just let the system to carry out the report preparations, and the whole process, I would say, is streamlined to a very large extent. Like from 18 months, then you can maybe like half a year you can cover as many as building you want, and hopefully this can answer your questions.
That's great. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you.
Excellent, Theo. Well done for a great presentation, and we'll speak to you at session 3. So well done to Theo from our Far East section. We'll now move over to our South West section. Katie Ling from Customer Support at Wales and West Utilities. Katie's going to be presenting on coaching, supporting and optimising. So over to you, Katie.
Hi, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen. There we are, we should be able to see that. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I work for Wales and West Utilities, like you just said that, and I've been with Wales and West for 2 head office, and before that I was actually a teacher. I have a degree in education, and I've actually been able to use some skills from my teaching to put into play with this project. So it's been a really great sort of carb for me doing this. Today my presentation is coaching, supporting and optimising, based on my current role as a customer support officer. So what is a customer support officer? What do we do? I knock doors. For those of you who aren't familiar with Sheldon there, he is an excellent door knocker. There are 10 CSOs based in our network, and I am the CSO for Bristol, and I cover projects from Swindon to Evesham and everything in between. So you see that is a very small amount of what I do. So for this presentation only, we'll use that as a sort of the basis of what I've been doing, and we'll look at the data collected, the use of my data, why this is important, the results, what we're doing to go forward, and then obviously we'll get some questions. So data collection, we always send out a survey on behalf of our teams and Wales and West at the end of all of our projects. So I go out to customers before projects start, and I make sure that our customers know what to expect from us, and I speak to as many people as I possibly can. And then I go out at the end of our work as well, and I make sure that our customers haven't got any outstanding issues and things as well. So then they receive this survey, and they get questions asking them to mark on a scale of 1 to 10 on things such as advanced notification, professionalism, site tidiness, and then here we've got highlighted question 7 about communication, and question 11 is our overall satisfaction. We track all of the questions on a monthly basis, and earlier this year I identified by looking at sort of the range of the score over a long period of time, that questions 7 a really low range when you compare to question 11, which sort of shows us that if you're successful with communicating, you'll be successful with your overall score, which is then backed up by these graphs. So looking at the survey returns all of last year and then up to October this year, we can see that as one goes up, the other one goes up, showing that positive correlation. And obviously we wanted to brief this out and make sure that our teams knew that the impact of good communication with the overall satisfaction. So we took out some information to them, showed them this graph, and we decided as a patch, as a team, to commit to a new motto. Very simple, talk is cheap. Although question 6 on site tidiness and our question 8 on reinstatement are our lowest scoring questions on pretty much every return we get. Question 7 is our highest source of complaints. It is also the largest source of outgoings and goodwill payments. It's actually more than both reinstatement and site tidiness combined. But they are historically much more easy to fix in our D+1, which is the first 24 hours of that complaint coming in. And they're much more likely to be complaints that we could have avoided completely in the first place. So question 7 is mentioned mostly in comments that we have good returns on, and a lower scoring return would have more of a specific issue. So again, if it's got a low scoring communication but it's got a specific issue, we may have to look into comments and things as well on the surveys to find out exactly what it is that the customer is sort of looking for. So how did we use this information? I targeted 2 consistently low scoring teams. They were sort of scoring below target and very below target every month. So I visited their sites with our operational controller, which showed us as a bit of a united front there. And we had this buy-in for helping them improve their customer satisfaction. We presented them with feedback and we discussed our findings. We looked into their comments and we asked them then to put themselves on a performance plan. So they came up with their own commitments. Just to give you a bit of a background, here are my 2 teams. Team 1, they were a very young team, there's actually 5 of them. They travel in from Wales every day over to the Bristol patch, and they typically work the longest day they possibly can to make sure they can squeeze in as many surveys as they can. And they complete a large number of services, and they are our largest number of returns every month. And then team 2, they're a much more experienced team. Again, they've got 5 of them missing their apprentice there. They receive a high number of returns when they do get returns in, but they, again, like because they're experienced, they do often have projects that are sort of maybe medium or high pressure pipes. Well, medium pressure pipes they'll be on, and they won't always have customers on those jobs, so they don't always get the opportunity to rectify any poor scores from previous months. So team 1's commitments, they look at what they've got in there. Obviously, they're all aimed at improving their communication, but we do also have transfers before relays there, which will reduce people's time off gas as well. So they want to speak to as many customers as possible and endeavour to speak to customers regularly. We want to keep customers in mind with things like access and obviously speaking to them before we dig. And we took with us some feedback for them to improve on to give them a sort of starting a basis to start making their commitments. So they had people say that they wanted to be kept informed. They've been given inaccurate information, and then it's so easy to fix that by going and speaking to them again and saying we've changed what was happening before. And then the gas, obviously, they reported something and then never heard back as to what the result of that would be. But we didn't want to completely knock them down, so we took with us a lot of positive comments as well. They are all helpful and they do work long hours, and it is noticed. So we want to make sure that we're not sort of removing good habits when we're looking at improving the communication there. So these are team 2's commitments. So they have to wait to work on private land. They want to use cards for customers who aren't in, and they also used myself as the CSO to support the team, managing customer expectations up front as well. So they wanted to sort of change how they communicate with their customers. We also took their feedback for improvement. So again, it mentions attitude and communication there. With this team being an older team, that attitude, they were a bit grumpy and they knew it. So it was picked up on surveys, and I think that it was made clear to them then that that's not really how we want them to work. But again, we took that top comment there, best day ever for our grandson, is my favourite comment. It just shows that by doing something that they've chosen to do and they want to do that, they are already building that relationship, but they don't see that as communicating and they don't see it as hard work. So I said, you know, by doing that, you're already building that positive relationship and being approachable for whoever that customer is. So those are great. But why is it important? So we want to develop and improve, evolve with our customers, but the only way to do that is by acting on feedback. So we want to continuously improve our customer experience, and it will also have a knock-on effect. So our question 6 on site tidiness, we can see here there's lots of different reasons for sort of site tidiness complaints. And we feel that if we communicate better with our customers, we can manage expectation and we can show them, or we can explain to them what a tidy site means, so that they know exactly what to expect when we do actually start on site. We feed every single month in a format using these tables. So we put it on a one-pager for our teams, and they just show them where they sit in this league table. So it's a year. This is a year-to-date one. We also do a monthly one, and the target is 8.95. So anybody who's above that is in green. The teams want to see themselves at the top, obviously, but if obviously you can't be number 1, they definitely want to be in the green there. This information is shared with their managers, all upper management, and then all the teams themselves. We are regulated by IGEM, obviously, and our funding is based on our performance. But the teams we have on the ground, they are very driven by push and pipe. But Wales and West do hold customer service as a very high priority. With the replacement works that we're doing, customers don't ask us to come and do this work. So we are a monopoly in that sense, that, you know, that the customers don't choose us, but we definitely want to have customers sort of say if they could choose us, then they would. So we then sort of scored and we get put in the national league table. We can see here that Wales and West were second in the planned work and in our overall customer satisfaction year to date. And so what were the results of this project? We can see these are the results here for Team 1. Year to date last year, that we still ended the year under target, but they did have a massive improvement from the beginning of the year up to, well, we implemented this in July. So from July up until the end of the year, we did bump that 8.23 right up, but we did still end the year just under target. But then this year, you can see they've got every single question there is above target. They have done extremely well, and that was as of last month, and this month we had our scores in, and they've managed to keep that up. So it is continuing. And the same there with Team 2. So again, they were extremely low under target, and again they did end last year just under target. But again, as soon as we sort of started putting this in place from July onwards, they actually had every single month above target, apart from November, December, obviously our notorious cold months. So obviously that brought us up again, but just under target. And this year again, we're managing to keep our overall satisfaction score above target as well. So going forward, I've moved into a monitoring phase with the teams that I've worked with already. So I don't visit them weekly as I have been doing. I visit them maybe bi-weekly, maybe twice a month whenever I can get there. But I want to repeat this with other teams who are just below our target. So in the score table, the ones who are in the red, but only just, and that's consistent. We have teams that are there every month. So we want to nudge them up into the green and get them to stay above the target there. And we'd like to make these teams going forward, obviously, to work independently and maintain that score by themselves. So without losing a high score, to be sustainable, we want to nurture the teams and to make sure that they have a way of working where we can deliver excellent customer service, as well as obviously achieving all the targets that they want to achieve as well. And I think particularly with this project, because we're able to be bespoke with each team, it's worked really well. So what does this mean? At the moment, or previously, we have been not really been able to achieve 100% knocks. So when a project starts, obviously we go out and speak to as many customers as we can, but we simply cannot get to every job that's going to start that month. So with the teams who have been targeted and they've had this project and we've worked with them, we're hoping that those teams will be less of a priority to get to when they start, and we say, you speak to your customers, you get started, and we'll come and speak to you and help you and support you as soon as we can. This will then in turn develop the CSO role and responsibilities, moving into more of a coaching and developing role. And I'd love to go network wide. So we'd like to implement this in other areas, and already we've been able to do this in Exeter. The CSO down there has worked with one of their teams, and the feedback from myself has been brilliant. They were successful with it as well. And I am looking forward to working with anyone else who wants to take on this challenge. And I've been really lucky to be able to get some excellent feedback from, we work with Morrison's Utility Services, part of the Western Gas Alliance, and their operations manager has sort of praised the positive impact we've been able to have with this project. So thank you very much. That's me done.
Superb, Katie. Excellent presentation, and just highlights the importance of customer engagement. Excellent to see actual tangible results as well of improvements being made. First, we'll come to Graham, first of all, from our judges.
Okay. Hi, Katie. Super presentation. Thank you, and a great subject. Katie, I'm really interested in just developing a little bit more about how you turn, using your term, a grumpy team into a good performing team. Could you talk to me about some of the personal effects that you had on that, and how you particularly went about it?
I've got to say it was probably one of the bigger challenges. First of all, I've never worked in this kind of environment before, and approaching a team like Team 2 in the beginning was very daunting. It took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of visiting them. It took a lot of explaining, you know, what I'm doing. And at first, a lot of the time when they see me, they don't always see me knocking and speaking to customers, because we do that before they arrive and after they've gone. So for them to take me seriously, it was just speaking to them, asking them how they do their job, learning from them, showing them that, you know, I'm really interested in what they do, and helping them to achieve their targets, as well as obviously making sure that they're performing well in every area that they can in this job. So it's just communication again, but it's internal communication with them, and obviously showing that I am supporting them, and that I'm not just somebody who shows up on site whenever I feel like it and putting on, you know, my yellow jacket and pretending that I know what I'm doing. I am working really, really hard to build that relationship with them. So yeah, they've bought into it, and they agreed that, you know, after seeing the feedback, that they wanted to be a part of it. So it was great like that.
Thank you, Katie.
Excellent. We'll come to Jane if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Katie, that was excellent, and I have to admit your presentation made me feel very guilty, because you talked about grumpy teams. I would say that I've been a grumpy customer in the past, and I will give feedback if I've got a complaint, but I don't always give feedback if it's positive. And I noticed on a score sheet that you showed that on the average score, one was 10, but you only had one return. Another was 0, and you only had one return. What do you do with results like that?
The one that was 0 wouldn't be counted, because I think that's come up if they've not answered questions. So that wouldn't count, which is really, really lucky. But again, that league table, the importance of aiming to achieve being in the green rather than being at the top is understanding that, you know, you do get teams who get one return and it's a good one. It was really driving to those teams who get 15, 20, 30, 40 returns, who are above that. You say, no, actually, you're the best performing team. It doesn't matter, you know, averages don't matter. If you're above the target and you've got that many returns, your returns are much more substantial than that one who got 10. They could have been doing their mum's property for all we know. So that is really important to make sure that they see that, and that they understand, and you talk to them and you explain you're not 5th, 6th, 7th in this 18-person leaderboard, and not achieving. You've had fantastic returns and it's been consistent. So it's making sure that they understand that and appreciate it.
That's great, Katie. Thank you very much for that.
Superb, Jane. And we've just got time for one last question from Duncan.
Hi, Katie. Excellent work and excellent results. I just would like to know that given your background, your education background, and your previous job as a teacher, do you think that helps for you to communicate with the team? And can you also share with us any bad experience you had in the past?
With my teams? Yeah. So yes, it's definitely helped. I wouldn't tell them, but when I work with reception and I try and explain to a small child what's going on, I use the same. I don't, obviously try not to speak down to them, but it's the same thing. You have to make sure that you're patient with them and you take on board what they're saying to be able to get your point across as well. So in many respects, yes, it's very similar speaking and teaching as it is trying to speak to the teams. Experience at the moment, actually. So as I said in my presentation, we're looking to target teams who are just underneath the target of 8.95. So those teams, the teams I've targeted, well, the one that I've put in play this month actually to continue the project, this team is consistently just underneath by 0.02, 0.03, and it's frustrating. Every single month you think, oh, one little push and you could get there. They're the team that I've got a great relationship with them. I see them quite often because they're one of the teams who's sort of really local to Bristol. So we've got a good relationship, and all of a sudden I'm finding it really difficult to put this into play with them because they're not feeling the pressure that the other teams were feeling for being so low down the leaderboard consistently. They're not getting that. They're not that low down, so they're not being hounded by management who want to get the pipe in the ground. They're only being hounded by me. So this is the biggest challenge I faced so far, and I'm looking forward to really succeeding with this. And I think it'll probably be the most satisfying result ever when they get above that green line and they start achieving consistently high scores. So, yeah.
Katie, excellent. Well done.
Thank you.
Superb, Katie. That concludes your presentation. Excellent work and great answering the questions. Okay, so we'll move on to our last finalist of this session. We've heard from Katie, Theo and Amy, who spoke to us about innovative ways of improving operational efficiencies. Sikander Mahmood from Caden, who's a project manager from our northwest section, is going to continue the theme from where Niamh picked off, and he's going to talk about sort of the decarbonisation of the gas network. So over to you, Sikander.
Thank you, Gordon. Good morning, all. So as Gordon mentioned, my name is Sikander, and I currently work for Cadent as a project manager, leading on some of our hydrogen projects such as High Deploy, which I'll go into more detail today. And I'll talk a bit about myself towards the end. My presentation will give you an overview of the strategy going forward and focus on the pioneering work that we're doing with the High Deploy project. I'll then give you some insight into my role and finish off with the vision and my journey to get to this point. So by now, we all know the government has committed to achieving net zero by 2050. We know that recently the 10-point and it featured hydrogen way up in the list. The government want a hydrogen town, they want a hydrogen village, they want blending to be rolled out. So what are the gas networks doing? We've made some significant strides in moving towards a low carbon gas network, working on projects such as the biomethane work, innovation projects like BioSNG, where we're converting black bag waste into gas. And blending hydrogen is taking place across Europe, but the UK is really pushing the boat out. And this is all to work progressively towards supplying closer to 100% hydrogen, be it for heavy industry, for transport, for power generation, or for new developments. But today I'll focus on blending. So Cadent is leading on the High Deploy project, which is an innovation project funded by IGEM and managed by a consortium of experts. So what is our objective? It's really simple. We want to demonstrate that we can safely blend up to 20% hydrogen in the existing gas infrastructure, safely and efficiently. So you ask, why should we blend? Why not skip this step and go straight to 100%? Well, we can start to blend without disrupting customers by using the same appliances that we have now. we can implement the blend and we can start to build that hydrogen supply chain to ready ourselves for that 100% transition. And in doing so, we make material savings on emissions. If we were to blend across the UK, it would be as if we're taking off 2.5 million cars from the road. HyDeploy is set up in a way which allows us to achieve a smooth transition to UK-wide rollout. And we've committed to 3 demonstration projects. And these can be split into 3 phases: the safety case development, the installation of the equipment, and then the live trial. And we started to build a safety case at Keele University in 2017. And we've begun injecting hydrogen up to 20% into people's home for the first time in the UK in 2019. And in parallel to this, we have started to build a safety case of evidence for the Northeast demonstration, which will be in a village called Winlayton. And we hope to start the live trial early next year. Our attention will then turn to the Northwest demonstration, where we will aim to reduce those evidence gaps which we've not been able to close out in the first 2 demonstrations, and that will allow us to transition to a UK rollout position. I mentioned the safety case, but what does that actually mean? So currently the gas safety management regulations only permit 0.1% hydrogen in the networks. So to allow a project to blend up to 20%, we must achieve an exemption to that regulation by building the safety case of evidence. HyDeploy achieved the first exemption to this limit. Some of the key work packages include the appliance testing and review that we've done, understanding if the current appliances will operate safely on a blend, materials testing, how will the pipes we have perform with the addition of hydrogen, gas characteristics, understanding how gas properties differ from natural gas. If there was a leak, would it accumulate differently to natural gas? Would the ignition be different? And we also assess the operational aspects, such as our emergency procedures, our gas detection equipment, which I'll go into more detail later. And finally, a crucial aspect of the project is understanding customer perception. HyDeploy is the first project to have a live trial in customers' homes, so we have really managed to get some great learning and understanding. So being involved in the HyDeploy project means that you're never short of responsibility. I've been involved in numerous work packages, but for the sake of this presentation, I'll just go over a few now and discuss a couple more in detail later. So I've supported the development of the safety case for the first 2 demonstrations by participating in the various evidence gathering workshops that we've had, such as the appliance testing, the procedural reviews, gas characteristics, and operational requirements. Also, I've been looking at the materials which may come into contact with the blend by reviewing the data we have within the networks. And it's these tasks that really allow us to build the evidence needed to achieve the exemption. Also, as we have been blending at Keele University, I've been working with our contractors to ensure that we're on track and any concerns are being identified and rectified. And these issues include arranging maintenance visits and coordinating investigations. But my primary role is to focus on the 3rd demonstration project, which I'll go into a little more detail on the next slide. And that involves shifting our focus to understanding how we facilitate a UK-wide rollout of blended gas. So I'd like to hone in on the work that I've done regarding the 3rd demonstration and how we're assessing the suitability of the sites. As you can imagine, it's not easy to find a suitable site to host a public demonstration of hydrogen. During my time in this role, I've looked at a whole host of options in multiple locations in the northwest of England. And I undertook an internal investigation with our network analysis team to really close in on a few locations which could support a public demonstration. And that means being able to isolate the network, having a certain number of users so we can meet the demand, being in the right pressure tiers. And this process helped us identify a shortlist. I then worked with the team to dig into the detail of the proposals by conducting demographic research to ensure that we're being statistically representative of the UK. Also assessing the proposed blend site to evaluate the materials and the asset that would be within that network. And you'll remember that our objective is to facilitate the rollout of blended gas. So it's really important to assess the users on the network. Now, Cadent has 11 million customers and the user base is really diverse. And we've looked at the industrial sector and done some early assessments of what applications we can showcase in the demonstrations to further that evidence base. And finally, I also manage the site decision working group, which essentially means coordinating all the activities I just discussed. So I mentioned before about gas detection. Another area which I've been managing and leading on is the work that we're doing on blend-ready gas detectors. HiDeploy, through its industry engagement, has really encouraged manufacturers to start thinking about those essential products in a blend network. Now, the current gas detectors need to be adjusted to detect blended gas. And if they have CO sensors, this needs some additional work to ensure that there's no cross-sensitivity with hydrogen. And I'm leading that work with a gas detection manufacturer who has designed such a detector based on our recommendations. I'm working with them and our internal policy team to ensure that it's approved and ready to use in a blend network. So this means scoping out the works, agreeing the costs and the contracts. I'm also managing the field trials. So we've started those now with the first call operatives. And this work also includes collaboration with the health and safety executive, their science division, to be able to test that detector in lab conditions. And it's really a key piece of work which fits nicely into UK rollout of blended gas. And it has the potential to be the first blended gas detector in the UK. So with a project like this, there's always challenges. I won't list them all, but I'll touch on a few. There have been occasions when details which are unknown at the time can put a blocker in front of you. An example of this is one of the sites that we were investigating for the trial had water mains running under it. The data on them wasn't the best, which meant that we had to redesign the plans to ensure that we would not affect the integrity of the pipework. And this also ties into planning considerations which need to be addressed with care. Most of the sites that I've been investigating have a wide variety of considerations, such as being in coal mining areas, being in open space, or even ensuring that you're not affecting the wildlife, such as nesting birds or great crested newts even. And it's important to start that process early. Another challenge which can be found across most projects is efficiently working with multiple contractors. If a certain work package is delivered late or out of spec, this can have an impact to other suppliers and other deliverables, resulting in a delay to the overall project. And on a similar vein, there are often times along the project timeline where we must take a different approach, and that's due to the evidence base changing, which can happen because we are constantly gathering new information from the tests that we're doing, from the reviews that we're doing, and they've been ongoing. And this can become challenging as it shifts that project direction. Similarly, COVID-19 has had a huge impact to all projects around the world, and HiDeploy is no different. I've had to manage aspects such as planning the training for operatives and site inspections whilst considering the impact from COVID-19. And finally, I accept that I'm a young engineer with a lot still to learn, and therefore acknowledging my own knowledge gaps is important, but it's also important to know how to address those and how to really use the skills of my wider team. So yes, it's nice to have challenges, but it's important we can learn from them. Early engagement is important in all aspects of the project. Contingency planning, so having options in case there is a change in direction or blocker to the current approach. Otherwise, the cost and resources can be wasted. And being adaptable to change, looking at the bigger picture to assess the wider impact. So just to touch on where we are currently, so we are still blending at Kiel. It's been extended due to the stoppage in C19. The second exemption has been submitted and is under review. We're finalising the third demonstration site. The gas detection field trials have now started. And now we really shift our focus to closing those evidence gaps for UK rollout. So very quickly, I won't dwell on this, but this picture explains the overall vision. It's a package of work under the name of HyNet, where we have a central production mechanism using methane reforming to produce the hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, which I won't go into detail because Niamh did a brilliant presentation on that. And you can see here how blending really plays a key role in the system. The pink houses on the right connect into the network. And it's the evidence that we're gathering in HiDeploy which will allow us, a system like this to really flourish. So I'll finish off with what I said at the start by going back to myself and my journey. So here goes. From a young age, I had a keen interest in science and mathematics. I ended up studying biology and chemistry at A level, as my parents suggested I do pharmacy. It never really sat well with me, and luckily for me, my chemistry teacher had no faith in me. Although my grades were good, he predicted me an E, meaning I could not plan to apply for pharmacy and had to look at other opportunities. After countless hours of research, I decided, you know what, I want to be an engineer. But one problem, I didn't have the subjects required. I found a foundation course in engineering, but it meant I had to learn all 2-year A-level courses within 1 year. A fair few people at that time thought I was a failure because they were either working full-time or in full-time degrees. It was a difficult year for me, but I passed with a distinction and became the first in my family to go to university. I chose to take a sandwich year so I could get some experience. I applied to around 50 different places and received only one interview, which was for National Grid. After a 2-day assessment centre, I received a phone call during a lecture, which meant I climbed out from the middle of the lecture room because I knew what that meant. I spent a year working in London, the first time someone in my family has lived away from home. An amazing year in which I helped push vacuum excavation technology to the front of people's minds. I was called back to join the graduate scheme, but was told National Grid would separate their gas distribution system. I said I would think about it as my interests were actually in renewable technology. And at that time, I assumed that was only in electricity. After receiving a first in mechanical engineering, I decided to take the chance and join Cadence, an opportunity to join a new company with big ambitions. I was working in emergency with the front line. And although I did enjoy that, I always had that thought in the back of my mind. I wanted to impact the future of energy. I wanted to do something which was sustainable. I was given the opportunity to work for the Future of Gas team for 6 months and helped get our hydrogen transport projects up and running, whilst also spending a little bit of time on high deploy. I knew right there, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. My boss invited me to join the team after my graduate program, and here I am, a really proud moment for me. The first in my family to join a large company like Cadent, the first engineer in my family, the first to go to university, the only minority ethnic in my team, the only Muslim in my project, working on the first project in the UK to put hydrogen into people's homes. And now I'm presenting in the final of this great competition. It doesn't get any better for me. Win or lose, I'm grateful for the opportunity. And thank you all for listening to my presentation.
Okay, superb, Sikander. Well done there. Brilliant presentation and really interesting career journey there. Quite a cutie as well when you were a child. Don't know what happened, Sikander, to be honest. But we'll move on to the judges' questions. So first of all, we'll come to Duncan.
Hi, Sikander. It was a very good presentation. I just want to know, are there any early results from the trial so that it influenced your team to change the original plan?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Duncan. There have been many occasions where we've gathered more information during the trial, such as the control mechanisms that we have in the unit which blends hydrogen. As we conduct the live trial, we start to improve that control mechanism so we can start to improve the blending in the network. There's also areas where we've done testing on appliances and we've been able to understand the situation where the position for blended gas is safe, but throughout the program, we've been able to develop further evidence on those and make that position solidify.
Thank you, Sikander.
Thank you.
Superb. We'll come to Graham.
Right, Sikander, I had a load of technical questions, but unfortunately that last bit is you threw me off tactics now. So my question is going to be about you. Talk to me about the future. You know, you've talked a lot about your past. You've talked quite a bit about your present. Talk to me about your future very quickly, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Graham. The future for me is to continue on with the work. The short-term future is to continue on with the work that I'm doing with high deploy and with blending into the networks. We have just begun that journey. It's not finished. The government has given us an indication as to the fact that they want blending to be rolled out across the UK. So I don't want to stop halfway. I want to work with the team and really develop that evidence we need to prove that blending can happen across the UK and make the UK, stand out in the world as a pioneer for blending hydrogen. That's my short-term future. Hopefully we can achieve that in the next few years. And after that, that's something to think about once I've done.
Thank you.
Great stuff. And we've just got time for one question from Jane. Over to you, Jane.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sikandar. That was an excellent presentation. The importance of the trials that you're running in terms of the UK rollout is very important and very interesting. What can you explain exactly what factors are being monitored during the trials to demonstrate safety and efficiency?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Jane. And it's a really important one, which many of our customers are obviously asking us. Throughout the trial, there are many mechanisms which we need to ensure are safe and efficient during the trial. Firstly, the compound itself. So the unit which produces the hydrogen is an electrolyzer. We're producing hydrogen on site via electrolysis. So we need to maintain that equipment. We need to make sure that it's operating safely. We've carried out pressure tests throughout the trial. We've also got the blending unit, which we need to make sure is blending to a consistent level. So if we have the set point, for example, at 15%, we need to make sure that it's not going above that into the network. We also need to check customers' appliances. We've done our annual gas safe check at Kiel as well to service the appliances and make sure that there's no operating issues on a blend of hydrogen. We need to monitor the pipelines that we have in the network. So we've got a variety of pipelines in the Kiel network, plastic and steel. We've done camera surveys at the start of the trial, and during the trial, we have our emergency FCOs monitoring the system, making sure there are no leaks. And finally, a really important one, because this is a first of a kind project, we're also looking at rhinology. So measuring the odorant level that's in the system. As we increase the blend levels, we need to make sure that the odorant is still strong enough for customers to be able to smell, so that if there was to be a gas leak, they would be able to report that.
That's excellent, Sikandar. Thank you. That was very clear.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, superb, Sikandar. So that concludes our first session of our first 5 presenters. Thanks to all finalists, Sikandar, Katie, Theo, Neve and Amy, all really setting a high standard for the next 5. What we're going to do is take a quick break. So go and grab yourself a cup of coffee, and we will resume for our second session in 15. So hopefully see you there, guys. Thanks, everyone.